They were called nippers and nipperettes. They actually combined themselves to be called the nippers, and the girls had a little bit of trouble carrying the reels, the larger reels, but later on they made smaller ones. But the kids of today enjoy the nippers, and I think it's the best thing that ever happened. The ever-changing face of Kilcare Beach, it's something that is never the same from week to week, with sand disappearing, the bogey hole filling up, the beach eroding, large seas just take the sand away, nor'easters bringing the sand back in, filling the beaches up again. Kilcare Beach is the most beautifulest place in the Central Coast, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
Let's proceed now to the fisherman's end of Putty Beach. Helen Cameron's father, Alec, second from the right, suffered injury in World War I, and life was a struggle for the family of 6 children, particularly during the Depression years of the 1930s. Fishing was their main source of income. Mullet have long been fished from Fisherman's End, and this precarious tower was used to watch out for the shoals. Beverly Wyatt, née Anand, recalls thinking,
"However did they climb up the tripod tower, which was made from saplings and driftwood? My dad, Bert Anand, was very skilled at reading the water by the shadows and the ripples. He would sing out 'Boats!' which would be launched straight away with nets. This would be peak time around Easter."
With the aid of a net, the shoal was drawn into the beach, with the help of lots of hard yanking. A boatload of fish was the result, with the problem remaining of transporting them as quickly as possible to the Sydney markets. Sometimes they didn't make it in good condition in these pre-refrigeration days.
Sometimes they got so many mullet that they gave them away on the beach, and they would bury them in the sand so they wouldn't spoil. The fish markets would only take so many boxes at a time.
In the 1960s, Fisherman's End and most of the foredunes along the beach were devastated by the sand mining industry, and the high dunes, seen earlier in this film, were seen no more. Mining did bring jobs to the area, and you can see how dune grass was planted to assist the stabilisation process. However, Bitu bush and lantana also entered the picture, and the battle still goes on with these and other noxious weeds. To complete our time tour, we move now to the plateau area of the Bouddi Peninsula, with its steep escarpments dropping down to Fletcher's Glen and Maitland Bay. Who needs to travel to Wineglass Bay in Tasmania when we have our own wineglass full and overflowing at Maitland Bay, seen here in these fine aerial shots by Manfred Gottschalk. We remember again that these escarpments were excellent dwelling places for Aboriginal people, and this air-conditioned cave, with its patio and fine view, is surrounded by evidence of settlement for countless centuries, including cutting tools and shells shaped into fishing hooks. Timber was cut from this area, and you can see why, gazing up at the straight and stately blackbutt, which is 150 feet tall. Bullock teams would have been seen in early days, snigging the timber out of the forest, like this one at McMaster's Beach. The plateau area in the triangle between the scenic road, Maitland Bay Drive and Wards Hill Road, with its deep lateritic soil, was fine for growing tomatoes, passion fruit, beans, peas, and there was some citrus as well. Sweet potatoes were grown on Russell Drysdale's property, much to the delight of the bandicoots. There were also dairy farms along Maitland Bay Drive. During World War II, the highest point in our coast, above Bombay Point, was the site of an important radar station, which tracked all passing ships. Unfortunately, it didn't pick up the midget submarines and their mothership. In 1942, there were 23 RAF men, and 18 WAF women there. One Day's Diary in 1944 reports bushfires in the area, and the WAFs found a valuable job to do. The girls of the unit carried steaming tea and sandwiches down to the tired firefighters. This was a welcome break, and we worked on with renewed vigour. The Maitland Bay store dates from the 1950s, and here are John and Dulcie Wall outside their store with some local produce advertised for sale. Their son Barry recalls the following events.
John Wall was contacted by the divers who found the bell of the Maitland, and the bell was brought up to the store for safekeeping with Dad's help. A lot of blood, sweat and tears were spilt doing it. With hammer and chisel, Dad chipped a sign into a rock, "Good waters in ferns." Today that sign should still be there, and the water is very sweet.
John's right. The sign is still there today, although it's covered in lichens, but we strongly suggest you don't drink the water. In later years, the Maitland Bay store was transformed into the Maitland Bay Information Centre, thanks to the National Parks and Wildlife Service and the wonderful work of Alan and Beryl Strom and their many, many helpers. The preservation of much of the peninsula as Bouddi National Park goes back to the story of Murray Biles, which is well told in our CD-ROM by Anne McLeod, who describes how, from the Palm Beach holiday house, Murray gazed through a telescope to the rugged stretch of untouched coastline beyond the Hawkesbury River. Bowing to visit her fairy lands forlorn, she convinced a group of university girlfriends to accompany her to explore the area, carrying canvas ground sheets and quilts for sleeping, just enough food for their survival, and a Colt 45 for protection. They struggled through dense scrub with the help of a map, compass and a tomahawk. Finally, they made their way to a secluded beach, now known as Maitland Bay. Elated, they took off their skirts and danced on the sand in their bloomers. Comment: sadly, no photos are available of this event. With fellow members of the Sydney Bushwalkers Club, Mari explored this area further in the 1930s. That's her on the left foreground. Read our CD-ROM for a fuller story. Mari and her fellow club members set up camp at the beach and enjoyed the delights of this pristine place. Well, not quite pristine, as you'll notice a humpy at the right rear, which was used by fishermen at what was first called Fisherman's Beach. Travelling further back in time, this beach was the scene of the tragic wreck of the coastal paddle steamer Maitland, a wild and stormy morning on the 5th of May, 1898. "24 people died, and the Herald reporter wrote, 'Looking at the wreck, it seems wonderful how anyone from the forepart of the ship ever passed alive over the angry foam with its ugly points of jutting rocks between the vessels and the shore.' In the years since the wreck, there have been stories of ghosts at Maitland Bay. You can read more in Jill Baxter's book Reflections from the Beach and the Bays. Here is Cyril Hayden telling of his meeting with a ghost as he fished from one of the boilers, as recorded during the research for Jill's book.
I was fishing away and I was catching fish, which is important because if you're not catching fish you might daydream. But I certainly wasn't daydreaming. And I was caught a fish and I put it on. You had to put it under your arm. You had nowhere to put it. We had a bag over our necks that we put the fish into and our bait into a little pocket in the front of it. So I was slipping this hook out of the fish to slip him into the bag, and a fellow came from the same area as Annan had occupied, and he looked over my shoulder as I was taking the fish off the hook and putting it in the bag, and then when I completed that I had to bait up again, which I did, took a little bit of bait out of the pocket, put it on the hook